Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you for braving some pretty severe weather and some dysfunctional trains. I'm Alex Sacco. I'm the chapter chair of IDSA New York. We are the New York City chapter of the Industrial Designers Society of America. IDSA is the largest and oldest professional organization for industrial design in the States. And its mission is to advance industrial design through advocacy, community, information, and education. In the New York chapter, we support that mission by connecting and inspiring the New York City creative community through events like this. So before I introduce the panel, I want to say a few quick thank yous. So of course, thank you to Cooper Union for giving us this awesome space. And thank you to Ford for sponsoring the event tonight as part of the ongoing Designing Innovation series. We have an amazing panel for you tonight, thought leaders across design education, innovation, automotive, venture capital. I'm really thrilled. I think they'll share some amazing insights. So joining us on our panel tonight are Craig Metros, the exterior design director for Americas for Ford Motor Company, Ingrid Fetell, design director at IDEO, Steve Schlaffman, principal at RRE Ventures, and Allan Chochinov, chair of partner at Core 77, and chair of the MFA in Products of Design at SVA. And finally, our moderator is Rama Chorpash, chair of MFA in Industrial Design at Parsons. With that, let's welcome our panel.
There you go. I think I'm on. Craig. Yeah, good talk to you.
I think we should make a curve.
Should we do a curve?
Let's do a curve. Okay. Much more comfortable.
Is that okay for the camera?
To curve right.
Okay, that's definitely better for the light. I'd also like to thank Robert Nightingale, who's the chair of IDSA here in New York, and Alex Sacco, who's the VP who helped to put all of this together with Ford, so thank you. Jumping straight into questions around innovation. What does it mean to be a pioneer?
Getting right to it.
And I'll call that one out to Allan.
Well, probably just a big risk taker. Not afraid of breaking rules. Probably an optimist. And, voracious curiosity, I would say. This sort of single-mindedness, this 10,000 hours, this you can't have your family and your career and your art at the same time. I don't know. One life to live. It would be hard to accept that as the rule of, what to make important and how to spend your time. But certainly a devotion to something, seeing it through for me. Yeah.
Craig, what's it mean to be a pioneer for you at Ford?
Yeah, very, very similar to what Allan was describing. Henry Ford was a pioneer. He had vision so far in advance, things like the vertical manufacturing, the assembly line, the Rouge plant, the whole concept of bringing raw iron ore in one end, and at the other end a car comes out of it. So, these were ideas that he had back in the 20s. People thought he was out of his mind. So.
I could jump to a shot of that.
So yeah, I was asked about, I guess, my what's influenced me and what ideas that or innovations that I admire, and I guess working at Ford, the assembly line's a big one. It had such an impact on my industry and just the whole manufacturing of products. Just completely changed the landscape. So I had a very early shot. That was actually a Dodge plant. I don't know if anyone caught that. That wasn't a Model A plant. And then this is what assembly plant looks like today. Very,
Wait, you got 2 images?
very animated, very robotic.
Ford's got 3.
I'm special.
See, break the rules.
Pay the sponsorship. The big difference between these 2 images, and I think I'm going to skip the pioneering questions for both of you so you can jump in, but first image we saw, the innovations are in the turn of the century, right? So we have a lot of big changes happening from 1880 on, where you have Alexander Graham Bell, you have all of this new technology happening in transportation especially. So, just after that advent of the airplane, you have trains, huge focus in the United States around transportation, but also around labor. So in the second industrial revolution, the entire assembly line. What's changed here in terms of how we're doing things and the levels of precision, where things are made? Very, very different innovations happening.
Yeah, just automation. I mean, when you walk through a plant today, I mean, half of it's not even manned, and it's done for time, precision, safety. This is the welding pit. It's a very dangerous place. So you don't even see a human near this area where the body side and the roof and the cowl panels all come together and are all automatically welded. And it happens so fast and so precise. It's quite impressive to actually watch.
Yeah, there was a website that I found that was looking at where cars are manufactured, and it was a university website. It has every car, and actually Ford was, I'm forgetting which model it was, but it was the #1 in terms of components made in the U.S. and manufactured in the U.S. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with automation, with cost of labor. So it's a really, I think, pertinent question of our time of where we're making things and where automation is taking us. Steve, who's here, works as in ventures and has done exploration around supporting technology companies and really the Internet of Things in many ways. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the advances that you see happening on that edge.
Sure. Well, just to use the car example, what I find amazing is we all think of cars in a certain way today, and I really believe that we're on the cusp of just some phenomenal things happening in transportation. Certainly we can list Google, we can list Uber, and of course Tesla, right? And so I think that the car itself, there's been tweaks. I think we're going to see a fundamental change in what a car is in the next 20 years, which is like fascinating. And then as it relates to Internet of Things, we were talking before the panel that I was recently very fortunate to invest in a New York-based startup called Managed by Q. And where they're innovating is in the service economy. And so if you think about in New York alone, there's thousands of office spaces that need to be cleaned every day. But it's not just cleaning, they need a variety of services. And so what Managed by Q has done is they've built an iPad kiosk, and they sell the kiosk to office managers. And it becomes effectively like a menu. Think of it as the physical operating system for an office space. And so if you need cleaning, you need handymen, you need an IKEA desk assembled, you need office supplies, you need food, right? All of the things to run. And what they're doing is, what's amazing about this startup is it's not just software, it's software enabled. So on one end, they have the kiosk that's beautifully designed with a gorgeous user interface. And then that interface is with their full stack software solution. So it includes like everything from billing, scheduling, logistics, apps for their operators that are in the spaces. And then they're even using fair labor practices and hiring these operators and training them and making them feel like they're valued. And so they're creating a company that's thinking about their brand end to end, but that extends into the physical world, but uses software in a really interesting way.
I just want to point out that you said they're using even fair labor practices. That's how bad things are.
Yeah.
that was remarkable.
Yeah, no, it's
just
it's,
going
there,
on record.
there's a lot of discussion right now about the way that the large on-demand service companies are treating their workforces. If you talk to the Uber drivers, they say we love it, but then if you look at other categories, they feel like they're being taken advantage of because they're, in some respects, like full-time employees, but they're not getting all the benefits associated with it.
Well, it's actually an interesting point that's brought up because of the, I just read an article on Uber and the tragic events in India around a rape and an Uber driver. And I think what's interesting about this is it's within a system and a company and a brand that you can also have a different kind of accountability. And I think that's, I think
you mean that in a good way or in a bad way? Because I think
it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
so it can be
their business model appears to be being beyond the law, above the law, and that they will just get so fast, so big, so fast that they will be unstoppable.
Right.
And many people have written about this.
Yeah.
It seems to bear out in the behavior.
Well,
and sort of the recent contrition is, like, I want to buy it.
Yeah.
But.
Well, what I was saying about Uber is it's an open system, but it's based on trust, but it's so large that it's difficult to have any kind of accountability and policing. And I think what's interesting is how do you find the middle ground of trust, of the blind Craigslist, or are there other systems? And I think in these innovative spaces, that's whether it's favorites or connecting, I think that becomes increasingly important in a digital area. I mean, a strong example, which I think you'll touch on, is actually what's happening at Disney, which is again this double-edged sword. A lot of controversy around it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because what we're relying on with a lot of these services is it.
I don't know if it's picking you up.
Oh. You can stand up with that if you want.
Belt out a ballad now. Yeah, I think what we're relying on with a lot of these services is we're relying on data to, police or to sort of provide a filter for reputation. And I think, it's interesting because there's so much distrust of the way that companies like Uber, like Facebook, are handling data right now. But I do think there's actually a potential for companies that are handling data really responsibly to show.
Not Sony.
Not Sony, perhaps, but I think there are examples of companies that are using data in positive ways to actually start to show how a new relationship of trust can be built, and that data can be used in positive ways. I think the Disney example is playful, and it's showing right now. This is the Disney Magic Band, and I don't know if anyone has been to Disney in the past year and has received one of these, but basically it's an RFID-enabled device that allows access to different attractions within the park. It also serves as a room key and as a way to pay. But I think what's interesting about this is it serves as the basis for other kinds of experiences that could be much more serendipitous and delightful. So, one example is you go to the park with your child and it happens to be your child's birthday, and Disney happens to know that your child's favorite character is Goofy, and Goofy can come up and wish your kid happy birthday in what feels like a spontaneous way. And I was talking about this with a colleague, and it's almost like Disney is creating a way to sort of bring back Santa, like to take certain things that are fictions and make them reality. And I think that is a use of data that is very different than what we're seeing right now in the online space.
May I jump in with a related point? So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, and I don't know if this is even a term, but this idea of contextual computing, which is effectively what Disney is doing here. And the amazing thing is Disney's created their own device that works within their own sort of ecosystem, but what's exciting and fascinating is the fact that we all have phones in our pockets, right, that are always on, and we are soon going to have smart watches that are always on, that are beacons, right, that basically use Bluetooth, that are constantly giving and collecting signals. And so, we're seeing this at Disney World today, but you can bet in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to live in a world, for better or for worse, if privacy is really valued, and that is going to be sending you contextual messages that are personalized and hyper-local, and that's right around the corner. And there's a whole ecosystem. I counted over 50 companies that are innovating in beacons, which are these small sensors that are going to be deployed and then connected into apps that are always going to be on running in the background.
Well, what's so interesting, I think, about this technology is the notion of the appropriate time for a technology to launch and the acceptance of it. In the early 90s, I worked with Swatch Watch and helped to open their first studio in the United States. And we worked on a watch which was a ski pass, which was used throughout the EU. And you would you'd essentially buy it for a season. You could keep it as a memory, and you would just swipe by, and you could use it as a ski pass. But in that time, if you were to track a person skiing, that would be, nobody would do that. And I think post 9/11, huge shifts in what we accept, and also with all of the social media of what is acceptable. So not very long ago, to be tracked would not be socially acceptable. Today it is, and in fact, most of us have our phones turned on and actually choose to leave the tracking on. Yeah. And so I think there's a component of what happens in innovation and technology, and so RFID is very old technology. But what's interesting is for me, the social change that allows the technology to be used in a new way. And if maybe all of you could talk a little bit about those changes.
I think it needs to be unpacked a little bit. There's a utopian vision of what this is and what it means. To be cynical about this, I'm pretty sure that the first sell is going to be, you're not going to lose your kid, right? So this is an old fear that this technology will likely, again, I don't know, but if I was the marketing director, that's what I'd be going after first.
And they're probably also selling convenience.
This idea that you can just swipe your hand, again, this disintermediating of everything is just going to further homogenize our lives. It's going to preclude any kind of interaction. So, the big news this past week about the Starbucks app. Some people actually got it on their phone and didn't order it on their phone. So that's a whole other thing. But it's just finally, I won't be able to talk to the barista. It's just finally, no one will write my name and misspell it on my cup. Finally, we won't have amazing Instagrams of people misspelling. My wife's favorite example, it was Mark with a C. And so, and then you get it, it's like Kark. Right? So I think we should all say Mark with a C.
I think to your point, going back to...
I'm not finished.
Going back to the beacon example, if you look at there's Apple and Google and of course Samsung and the others, and Samsung is saying, you know what, we're going to allow beacons to talk to you without even having an app installed. So, the implications
again, reducing friction. I think one of the things that designers want to do in the world, speaking to a group of designers, is actually adding friction into the world. This obsession with making things easier and more convenient is killing us. We're not moving. We're not meeting our delivery person. We're not fighting with anyone. Sorry?
I'm going to shut your mic off so you have to scream to the audience.
Oh, yeah. Depend on technology tonight. But you know what I'm saying? It's this stuff is so seductive, and it's so beautiful now. And the threshold of design, this whole no one understands what design is. It's just you can thank, apps for people actually understanding what design is. Because when you have something that works poorly and something works beautifully, I think a lot of people are understanding that difference is called design. Yeah. So I'm optimistic about that part.
Don't you think design, we can control the overall experience? So we went to Disney, my family and I went last year and experienced the bracelet. And the technology's awesome. But it's how they present it. You arrive there and it's beautifully packaged. It's they're giving you this
magic bracelet,
this
to the magic
cool kingdom. Little gift, and then the kids love them. You can personalize them.
Do they get to keep them?
But they're selling you shit.
You do get to keep
they're getting you on a ride faster.
So they keep tracking you.
I don't know what the big win is. And again, I haven't experienced this. So
yeah, I think you don't lose your ticket.
So you'd have to keep track of your tickets. You'd have to think. and have pockets.
Well, these are.
It's like, I want to have pockets at Disneyland.
Well, so the question of.
Why would, that's going to ruin the experience, I mean, the UX.
For me, the question
I can't have pockets.
is the opting in or out as well. So, I mean, if I went with my daughter, I'm not sure I would want to opt in. I don't know if I want her followed to the bathroom and to know every single thing about her, the route she's taking. And I think it's a strong question. I mean, this technology was developed for prisoners, and you wear it on your ankle, and it wasn't very long ago. And you actually, I don't know if they still do that, but you see people.
They're really beautiful now.
Yeah,
Designers have made them very beautiful.
Sort of kryptonite ones.
Good job.
But
gorgeous.
A fundamental question I have is the kind of paper or plastic, but you still have to deal with the bag, and there's not another option. Like with technology, how do we create affordances to be able to opt out if you don't want to be part of that? And do we have to accept the acceleration that happens?
There is something called the scientific imperative, and we've all lived through it. Our grandparents have lived through lots of it. So I think fundamentally this is unstoppable. I think because we are in a bubble right now and there's so much money at stake, and because the design material now is information, I'm really interested in I know you're really interested in materiality. So I think that we can argue effectively right now. This is something that's popularized by Mike Kuniavsky. He talks about information is a material, and that it has material properties, it can be duplicated instantly and perfectly, it can sense, it can alert, right? It can ping you.
Yeah.
And so many people are designing things, making things out of information right now. And so this is a new kind of amazing thing. And because the material properties of information are actually quite amazing. It has no code of ethics. I don't know if I guess trees might have a code of ethic to them. The code of ethics for information actually needs to be the energy grid draw on all of these server farms. So we're building like a parallel planet Earth out of electricity and servers and cloud and platform, like at runaway speed. So we actually have to deal with the carbon footprint of 2 Earths right now. Only this one made out of information and so beautifully. I mean, I wouldn't put down all information systems. I wouldn't put down all apps. I use tons of them. They are irresistible. And so to your question, I don't think that this is stoppable. I think that as designers make this stuff better and better and better, and I believe that there's a good better too, that they actually do need to be mindful of the consequences of what they're making. And I don't think that they are at all.
If one goes back to the root of data, which is datum, and to think about, like, let's say data is 3-dimensional and it's a series of nodes. One can construct, for example, the Disney experience on a plane. But once you start to go through different datums and different angles and you find different things, I mean, I think that's the challenge is how do you unload as many possibilities as possible, which I think goes to the research component, where you're actually trying things out, studying it. As designers, what is our role in the research we do to actually test things before we bring a new innovation to market?
Well, I'll speak to this as a design researcher. I mean, I think, when it comes to things that are as big as data and that are affecting systems this large, I think to some extent it's the research can't tell you as much about the consequences of what that innovation might be. I think we can start to see, we can obviously at IDEO we're huge on prototyping and piloting things, but I do think there's a huge amount of ethical instinct that goes into it, and just an intuition for. I mean, the question I always ask designers is, as we're working on projects at IDEO, is does this make the world more like a world you want to live in, or less? Right? Very simple question, but I think there's a blanket intuition that's, I think sometimes we get so into the mindset of I want to make something really exciting for my client, and we forget sometimes that we're people people, and we have to say, you know, when this is actually out there, what's going to happen? What are the potential knock-on effects? And I think with data, you know, the opting out question is huge. You know, the data is gathered by large organizations, and there is no way to opt out. And I think
well, there are also armies of people and MBAs, like, whose aim is to not have that happen. Like,
to not have you opt out.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
working tonight, trying to cleverize things so that you, of course you wouldn't opt out. Like, look at the benefits of this thing.
Right.
To make it irresistible.
So, and I think that where your point about
Actively.
friction is really is valid is that I think as designers we have a responsibility to fill this gap. So I think in the data space it's the Wild West, right? And so any new space, regulation is going to take time to catch up to it. And I think we have a responsibility to fill that space. And it may not be by allowing people to opt out, but by ensuring that the data, once it's gathered, is used in really responsible ways.
Is there any regulation anymore? I mean, let's really be honest. Oh, well, here, right? Things moving are so fast.
Yeah.
And again, when we think about companies that are like too big to fail or too big to be stopped, I mean, there is a sense about sort of above the law, isn't there?
So let me just back up quickly. So you made a point earlier that there's too much money out. I would say historically, and I'll tie this back to your question, but if you look at what's happening right now, is the cost to start a company now is lower than it's ever been, right? And it's not just software, but it's now starting to be physical things with, you know, software in the cloud, rapid prototyping in 3D print, right? Like all of these tools, right? GitHub, right? Like all of these tools are now at our disposal. So because of that, and because it's an entrepreneur's market where there's a lot of money, you're gonna get a lot of innovation. And I think to your point around like, can you be a good company versus, like, of course, like I think there are a lot of examples of really amazing companies, and I think that the values of companies really have to come from the founders and the management team that's setting the tone and hiring people that have certain kinds of ethics.
Yeah. And then you don't have to lean on regulations, because I think that we know that regulations can be late, they can be, they can be wrong, right? Yeah. They can be inappropriate to their moment, and they can be completely ineffective.
The Airbnb debate is a good one.
That's a great one,
right?
Yeah.
Craig, can you talk about some of the technology in a car? So I have an old Volvo. I often joke that I paid more money for my cats than my car, and I did. And it's running pretty well. And I have my mechanic is in Staten Island, and it's called the Volvo mechanic, because he was sued by Volvo because he said Volvo mechanic, and he's a great mechanic, and he's kind of on the tail end of things, because my car has some digital things in it. He can fix it,
you could fix.
But it's the last. And I said, you know, I'm going to get a new car. Probably get a Ford. I asked. We talked about this, and I said, could I get a free car? And they said no, but. Offer still open for all the panelists.
Free cars?
But so my mechanic said, well, I'm probably going to be retiring soon because I can't service the new cars. And I know that you like hot rods and motorcycles, and you have an affinity for the mechanical. Cars are very dependent on technology now, not just in their construction, but in everything from the braking systems to. I don't have a specific question. Safety's a big one. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the positive changes that have happened, and some of the things that you reminisce about. That my mechanic's retiring, as a lot of people are retiring around this. And
well, I don't know if Allan's going to agree with this, because when he was talking about how everything's becoming so easy, and it's people are not thinking and interacting as much. Fortunately or unfortunately, again, things are becoming more and more automatic. I think we were going to talk about the Explorer at some point tonight. Right now it's got automatic parallel parking, where
actually, if we can cue the video of that, it's great to see.
The vehicle senses an open spot that it will fit in, and it'll park the car automatically, or now you can actually get out of it and park it by remote. So,
Really?
You don't even have to sit in your car
There
while
you-
it's parking itself.
In fact,
Because that would be
you can
shitty.
send it out to get the groceries.
For all those people who have a hard time parallel parking in New York. A big one is the fully automated vehicle that we're looking at right now. That's definitely on the horizon.
The thing is that the self-parallel parking car, like to me, like is kind of a delightful thing because I could see that as sort of this cultural moment. Like I think it would be decades that people would be dreaming. 'Cause this has always been a tricky thing for lots of people. The people who are good at it pride themselves on it.
Yeah.
People who are bad at it actually drive differently.
Right.
You know,
It's-
particularly in a city like this.
It's
So-
just desensitizing people to the inevitable end, which is self-driving cars.
It's
it may be just a step. Yeah.
I'm going to give my age away, but I can remember like getting a calculator for the first time in school, and suddenly like you don't have to add anymore or multiply, and it was, yeah. So I get it, and but the thing with some of the automated technology, it's optional. You don't have to use it, and I think and I can, for Ford anyway, as we sort of go toward automated driving vehicles, I think we're going to approach it in a way that I think some designers think 10 years from now you're going to get in your car and it's going to look like a living room and there's going to be no steering wheel and you can sit in there and smoke and drink and hang out with your
Smoke again?
friends. Yeah.
That's what my students are drawing right now.
And I think the way that we're approaching it is, again, it will be there if you want it, but the driver will always be in control. He or
Not for
she
long,
will have
apparently.
that
I
control.
mean, they're big questions. I have a friend who he leases a BMW every couple of years. I don't know if it's every year, and he goes to Munich and picks it up and ships it back, and there's a whole ritual around it. And he can't get a stick shift anymore. I mean, imagine a BMW that's no stick shift, and so he just switched brands because he said I can't get a stick shift, and it's things become. When the market becomes a focus, and I think it's a challenge. What I've been so impressed with companies is how they diversify in innovation. And if maybe some of you can talk about how big the world really is and how much diversity there is. And the focus of design of the 19th century, really into the 1960s, was to create a universal way to do things, to optimize things, so that we could reach everybody with it. I see big shifts happening. If maybe you guys can touch on that in terms of innovation, like how do you have multiple pathways that are happening that are sort of conflicts, but they're actually innovations in different groups. But the same sort of company can carry those innovations. So
Just to get there maybe on the way, but to pick up on the car, like the cultural shifts that the car created cannot be underestimated. Certainly, the interstate system in the United States, sort of people leaving urban areas. Many people credit the car for the sexual revolution in the 60s because it was the first time that young people had a private room. Right?
I think you're talking about vans.
Well, before bucket seats, right? And actually, this was one of the reasons a lot of people were not happy about bucket seats. It's because there was no more bench. And it was just a different social, sexual activity aside, it was a different social experience to be on a bench seat than to be in a bucket seat. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are likely high safety concerns toward the bucket seat. I don't know. But the consequences of car design have been, I think, like fascinating. And as we move to, again, this driverless car, which I cannot understand, then those cultural shifts are going to be incredible because you are actually going to be in the interior architecture business, right? Once there isn't an agency of the act of driving is now going to be the act of sitting, which will likely be the act of entertaining, and actually maybe the reactive sexual activity.
Or
defendable.
education.
Or education, because you could read in the car while you're going somewhere.
Yeah.
It's going to be. You're going to be in a completely different business.
It's going to, completely change the packaging and as you said, the
whole
architecture
value
of the car.
proposition. It will change the business.
Do you do 10, 20-year forecasting of what that looks like? So, one phase might be that it is like a car, and it's not this room that people are smoking in or whatever they do in it. But in 20 years, it actually might be more like a train, and they might all link up, and they shift, because I actually think that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, I was interviewed by Chrysler Magazine as an inspirational person, and one of the questions they asked, what was my favorite car? And I said the New York City subway car. They didn't put that on, so I get to say it in this presentation.
Good answer.
But I think it's very exciting with automated cars. I actually think that cars will become they individuate us, but there's also the possibility, as with social media and things, that they're going to come together. Yeah. And this is, I think, really exciting that, as a nation, we chose to be a car nation as opposed to a train nation. But there's a lot of pros to trains, and there's and I think, do you look out that far, or do you look, like, how far do you look in the car industry?
So we have the production side of the business, which we're working 5 to 6 years out, and then we have the advanced side. And right now we're probably looking maybe 20 years out.
That's amazing.
Yeah, have to. The cycles are so slow.
Oh, yeah.
And how about with technology?
So
like you're looking to make a profit quick.
Research.
You want to do it. Are you looking 20 years out?
I mean, we're really looking, our fund life cycle is usually about 10 years. So that's the horizon. But just like piggybacking off of your point about the convenience economy and your skepticism for it, and I think, look, there's a lot of arguments to being offline, and I love going offline many times a year to just sort of think without having a device in my hand. But like something that I love thinking about, and I'd love to get your take on it, but if you look back to the Industrial Revolution, right, you basically replaced human labor for mechanized human labor with mechanized labor, right? And if you think about, we're now in the information revolution. I think we're still in the very early stages, and by transferring the type of things that we could do, it freed up our mind and our capacity to focus on other things. And so what I'm thinking about, and this is much longer term, is like when we have machines and services that are doing a lot of the things, like what are the things that we're going to be doing with that surplus of time that will lead to prosperity and growth?
Clay Shirky talks about this a little bit, thinks about it a lot, I think.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating question. This is the huge upside of all of this, is like, if there's cognitive surplus, and if there's actually time, right? Because time, at least in this sort of privileged part of the world,
it's not even like the way that we think about going about our day and getting chores done. It's like work. Like there are going to be some jobs that are going to be offshored or taken over by computers, right?
I would actually argue. I think we're in an upswing at the moment, which is really exciting to me. I was in a conversation about the future of industrial design with Fiona Dunn and Tucker V. Meister, and the question of a bakery came up, and in the conversation it was like, now it's cool to be a baker.
Yeah, and rise of the artisanal.
And these, I think these, you were in that conversation as well. No, you weren't.
Couldn't make it.
In spirit. The purpose of doing things and why we do it, as we get rid of things, the sort of in the first world we might even see it as entertainment. Like what are we going to do?
We have to acknowledge the privilege here.
Yeah,
and
we're talking a very small part of the world.
Yeah.
But even I have some friends who have a firm in Shanghai, and they're developing vacations on commercial fish farms on islands for factory workers to go at a very low cost to live without electricity and to fish and take care of the fish farm, because people have such a need to actually have purpose in what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think as we go back, things are becoming automated and digital, but a lot of people are asking really existential questions of like, why am I doing this? And I want to be connected, and I actually want to know, what's happening and how is the sun affecting trees' growth. And so I think that there are these two sides of it that
You're talking to someone that meditates every day, so
Yeah.
I totally buy that.
Well,
yeah.
there's almost a civic marketing. There are cities like Vancouver and Portland who actually market themselves on our people, our citizenry, spend their money on experiences, not on things. I mean, this is now like a tourism mantra, which is fascinating, and I think largely a good one. So I would agree that we are actually in an upswing in people returning to knitting and making and craft and cooking and baking and just using their hands as sort of fundamental
But
human
that's
gratification.
how people are using their
with their surplus, yeah.
Right.
And so I think absolutely this is the huge, the promise
But-
of a lot of
but
these
interesting
things.
enough is
also you
what-
get sick of doing this. It's enough.
Actually, I'm the moderator. Please go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's also a rise of platforms that are sort of monetizing that surplus or allowing people to contribute. So I think assembly is a really interesting one where people can contribute snippets of code to the development of a product. So people can post ideas, and I think that that shift towards I can actually do something in that time that is productive as opposed to just purely consumption oriented is really interesting.
Yeah, we should talk about the sort of crowdsourced economy, and it's an unbelievably fantastic thing, and yes, exploited in other kinds of ways. But just this idea that these platforms provide access to people who have stuff to say, create creative work to contribute, who just never could. They couldn't find like-minded people before, and the ones that take the sort of the commerce, the money currency out of it are sort of extra beautiful. I don't think that money has to be a dirty thing, but the ones that have a different currency, like generosity, like participation, like cred, reputation you mentioned earlier. I mean, these are amazingly wonderful currencies that I think humans can be proud to have gotten to the point through an industrial revolution and now into a post-industrial revolution or post-post, a lot of people think, where we do have these new kinds of currencies that I think that we can be proud of, actually, that are sort of, many of which are sort of not exploitative. Although Cameron Tonkin-wise would challenge the sharing economy and exactly how sort of few conglomerates are actually profiting from it. So there's a debate there, but I think at least philosophically, this is it's a beautiful thing, and I think we're so lucky to be living in a moment to enjoy this, to participate in it, to be proud of it.
And just, I think, coming back to your initial question around the impact that technology is having on both a local and a global scale is mobile computing, right? If you think about smartphones, penetration, there's, I think, now 2 billion smartphones, right? There's another 4 billion people that are off the grid that are gonna have access to the rest of the world, and it's mind-blowing to think what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
The cognitive capacity will be amazing. The drive to the middle class, consumerism and stuff is terrifying.
Well, here's,
and again, it's we got to enjoy a middle class, but you don't get to because of the carbon footprint's going to kill us. These are really, really difficult, just mind perplexing.
We're going to get to some questions from the audience soon, but on actually that last point from you, Allan, what should be incremental? So we think, innovation is a great thing. That, we're sort of, benchmarking something new. It's a disruptive change. I know with brands, there's a lot of thought, about market and how long do you actually keep it the same? Is it the Gillette, the razor, and how long can you sort of, a company like that could make a razor that would last forever, but they choose not to, for many, clear reasons. What are some examples of things that probably belong in the incremental category that you don't want to innovate in? Or do we want to innovate in everything? Is it about we want to challenge the status quo and change everything, or are there things that we want to keep?
Well, what you were talking about earlier backstage, this idea about creating companies that are integrated, that care about their workforce, that have better than okay labor practices.
So a sense of values.
That becomes, it's sort of, what is the tribe you want to belong to if you're lucky to have a life, right? It's how do you want to spend your time if you're lucky enough to be in a place where you can actually choose how to spend your time?
Yeah, I mean,
so companies that are that are integrative, that are ethical, just as a shorthand, and not just as a way to attract and retain talent, but as a way to like be sort of a civic participant, like on planet Earth. Those are the companies that exactly, and like those are the companies to root for, right? Those are the companies you want to invest in.
Right. It's because they're for their employees, they're creating like a sense of community and belonging and identity,
all those
and
values,
all those things like really go a long way in a community.
So I think if you reimagine what currency is, I mean, the tricky thing with some of these currencies is they don't pay the grocery bill. Like they don't take, cred and reputation and like votes up. Or Instagram followers at the dry cleaner, and this is it's a real issue.
One thing about currency, and then I'll turn it over, is that we haven't talked about in terms of a trend that I've been observing that I think is powerful and tied to currency, but in a different way, and that's this idea of decentralization, right? And certainly we're having advances like Bitcoin, right, where it's a massively distributed, network of computers that are working on the blockchain. And the point of all this is that this is a paradigm that like has sprung up out of nowhere, right? Yeah. It's this innovation that happened completely off the map, and now the developer community has latched onto it. Right, and you're seeing that momentum, and so that's a phenomenal trend, and it ties into trust. Yeah. Right, and historically we've had centralized parties that verify trust and that say like government regulate and brokers of any sort of kind, people that say that something is authentic. And now with the blockchain technology, it's still the first inning of a long ball game, but like now the paradigm is going to be flipped, and I think we're going to see decentralization in things like mesh networking, which is certainly on the horizon. So
education, I mean, just these small pockets of alternative education models that people are just throwing against the wall and see if they stick, the kinds of access that they open up. Right. Again, this is like the most amazing time to be in design.
This one size fits all mode of education, and in the future you're going to have a menu of options and you're going to customize.
I think for timing, for the video, I'd just like to take some questions from the audience on that.
IKEA video.
As much as I want to go on.
Maybe we'll watch the IKEA video.
Hello? Is that what I sound like? Hi. This question is actually for Craig, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, Ford, I think, has always been recognized as the classic American vehicle. I'm a big Ford fan. We've got lots of old classic cars from Ford. But kind of in the wake of this technology boom, Tesla's going all electric, and the stuff that they've got in their vehicles is just amazing. BMW is now going to implement an electric line for their core vehicles. Kind of what is the vision for Ford moving forward? And is it kind of a focus on user experience and the technology that's in the vehicles, or is it about the carbon footprint and sustainability and thinking about the planet as a whole?
With Ford, it's all of that. It's all of that at half the price. Ford will always be a value vehicle. Ford will never compete head to head with BMW or Mercedes. Now the Lincoln's a different story, but Ford, it's a value-based product, and within that price segment, we're trying to inject as much technology and innovation and convenience as possible. So our vision, I don't know if you, so we just had a change of CEOs recently. Alan Mulally retired and Mark Fields has stepped in. And lately he's been doing a lot of presentations about where he wants to take the company and Ford's vision. It's all about technology, but it's affordable technology. So that's really where we're headed.
Are there more questions back there? There's someone in the middle.
With a light on. Oh, it might be a computer.
We can't see you.
I can see that.
Thank you. Hi, I actually just found a great question on Twitter. But it's a good question. I want to make sure it gets answered. Carlos asks, as a student of Parsons, I question, how will Ford's exterior design change with autonomous vehicles?
What did you hear?
Greg?
Oh, is it for me?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, can you repeat that? Sorry.
As a student of Parsons, I'll repeat that.
Yeah.
How can, it was about autonomous vehicles.
How will Ford's exterior design change with autonomous vehicles?
And you should meet the student.
They turn into
How
hotels.
can it change, or how will it change? I mean, we talked about this earlier. Dramatically. I mean, because it's automated and it's suddenly supposedly there'll be no human error. So we protect for pedestrian impact now.
Not a good idea.
All of that can go away. Especially the interior package, it's just going to be a completely different architecture. The way that you're positioned in the car, seated in the car, interact with people in the car.
Will the belts go away? Like, this is a question I have. Like, are you still is the proportion of like non-accidents going to get rid of belts and the regulation of seat belts? Because having a seatbelt in a car that you're just a passenger in is something that passengers experience all the time.
I mean,
but if everybody's a passenger, it's
yeah,
interesting, right?
and I can't speak for other companies, but for Ford, I mean, we're taking it sort of step by step. And as I said, it's tomorrow suddenly we're not going to start building lounge rooms on wheels. But I think even 15 years from now, sorry?
You need to be secretly prototyping them, right? Off the record?
See, this is code word for we're building lounge rooms on wheels.
And that's the internal term.
We're not going to.
I mean, Ford has always
Autonomous
stated
lounge
that
rooms.
at the end of the day, the driver will still be in control. You'll still have that option to take control of the car. And I mean, you can look at just the automated parking options that we have today. It's step by step. First it was it could parallel park by itself, and then it was, well, it can actually back in and pull in by itself, and now you don't even have to be in the car. So I think we're taking it step by step. But back to your original question, yeah, it's severely going to change the proportion, architecture, and packaging of our cars. I mean, I will say, I can't talk about a lot what we're doing in the future, but some of, I walk in the studio and look at objects that don't even look like cars to me. So things are definitely going to change.
Can I ask you a question about the, you'll always be able to have the option to take control of the car? Because, I mean, we know that cars, that drivers make errors, right? And that cars are inherently dangerous objects. And I just wonder, like, is that, if there comes a future where it becomes safer for a computer to drive the car, like, can you envision a future where we actually say it's no longer safe, it's no longer allowed for people to take that control?
The data says it is, right?
Or there's a different insurance premium. Oh, you're a driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even the infrastructure.
And the DMV, like, what's the test?
The infrastructure that has to be implemented to even, support a world where there's human drivers and automated drivers, right? Like, there's a lot that has to happen before we get there.
I guess I just wonder if that's a future that you're exploring.
Yeah, I can't say we're exploring it, but I see it.
You can't say the word exploring?
Sorry?
You could say it. Just couldn't show it.
See, we're waiting to the end to get to the secret Ford parts. This is what it's all about.
There's another video up there already.
I think we should queue up Allan's video before we close this out, because
It's very fun.
he's waiting for it.
Yeah. Big sound, please.
You know, once in a while, something comes along that changes the way we live.
Bigger sound.
A device so simple and intuitive, using it feels almost familiar. Introducing the 2015 IKEA catalog. It's not a digital book or an e-book. It's a book. The first thing to note is no cables, not even a power cable. The 2015 IKEA catalog comes fully charged, and the battery life is eternal. The interface is 7.5 by 8 inches, but can expand to 15 by 8 inches. The navigation is based on tactile touch technology that you can actually feel. Content comes pre-installed via 328 high-definition pages of inspiring home furnishing ideas. To start browsing, simply touch and drag. Right to left to move forwards. Left to right to move backwards. Notice something else? That's right, no lag. Each crystal clear page loads instantaneously, no matter how fast you scroll. If you want to get a quick overview, just hold it in the palm of your hand and using just your thumb, speed browse the content. If you find something you want to save for later, you can simply bookmark it. And even if you close the application, you can easily find the bookmark again. Amazing. What about multiple users? For that, we've introduced a simple color coding system to avoid confusion. If you want to share a particularly inspiring item, you literally share it. Another special feature is password protection, which is voice activated. Excuse me, that's mine. At IKEA, we feel that technology this life enhancing should be in the hands of everyone. So the 2015 IKEA catalog is free. You can download one from your mailbox, the one you open with a key. If it's not there, try refresh the next day. Or you can upload yourself to the IKEA store and find one there. Experience the power of a book.
So before we close this panel out, because I think we need to for time and to celebrate the IDSA Gala, I think one thing that maybe we can all discuss as we're going out is it better without phone books? And what does it mean for the biggest company in the world to make catalogs? And do we want to have them or not? Because I think it's a great question. Does anyone know who the biggest user of wood is in the world?
I think probably Victoria's Secret's holding company, right?
IKEA, yeah. And but I think it's also one of the most conscious companies. So they're very aware of these things. And I think these are big decisions in innovation. What is the best user experience? What's the best thing for the planet? How do people adopt new technology? What was the past, what the future is? I think these are the challenges that we have as businesses, as designers, as brands. And so that's, I think, a discussion that we should all keep going over some drinks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah,
So good.
yeah, that's
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thank you.